There are three traditional positions on our duty to obey the laws of a legitimate government, or positive laws, as they are often called. The first, which is called passive obedience, is affiliated with various theories of absolute sovereignty, such as that defended by Thomas Hobbes in the 17th century. According to the doctrine of passive obedience, every citizen has a duty to obey every governmental law, whatever his personal opinion of that law may be. To maintain otherwise, to uphold the right of each person to decide which laws he will or will not obey, will, according to the absolutist, destroy the foundation of law itself and plunge society into chaos and conflict. That anarchistic state of nature, which Hobbes described as a war of every man against every man, where life is nasty, brutish, and short. Or as an Australian philosopher friend of mine likes to say, where life is nasty, British, and short. The second position, known as passive resistance or passive disobedience, was popular among 17th century Quakers and other religious dissenters who correctly attributed this tactic to the early Christian community in Rome. Essentially, this doctrine asserts the right to disobey an unjust law, especially in matters of religious conscience, but it further affirms one's duty to submit to the legally prescribed punishment. In other words, one may resist an unjust law by refusing to obey it, but one may not resist the enforcement of that law. Defenders of this view had a viable response to their absolutist critics, who contended that the right of resistance undermines the authority of all laws, whether just or unjust. Passive resistance permits the individual to decide which laws are unjust without endangering the entire legal order. The individual resistor, by submitting to legal punishment, is able to register his protest or to give his testimony, as the Quakers like to say, without undercutting the public authority of law itself. In its modern form, this approach is often called nonviolent resistance or civil disobedience. Our third and final approach is the theory of active resistance or violent resistance. This theory asserts the right of every individual to disobey unjust laws and to forcibly resist the implementation of such laws. In the American Revolutionary tradition, and throughout radical republicanism generally, this was what was meant by the term the right of resistance. So when I speak of the right of resistance in this talk, I shall mean the right of active or violent resistance. To equate the right of resistance with violent methods can be justified on philosophic grounds. To possess a right, by definition, is to have an enforceable moral claim against other people. To have a right against a government means that certain moral claims, if ignored or violated by that government, can legitimately be defended with physical force. If we are never justified in using violence against our government, however unjust its actions may be, then we literally have no rights at all. A right that can never be enforced is a contradiction in terms. Against the right of resistance, it has been argued for centuries that such a right will undercut the authority of all governments and all laws. If I and everyone else may decide when a law is unjust and so resist its enforcement, doesn't this mean that everyone will simply obey whatever laws they'd like and disobey whatever laws they don't like? And if this is so, what is the point of having laws in the first place? Now, John Locke and others discuss this problem in considerable detail, and I shall simply summarize some of their major points. First, contrary to the charge that the right of resistance will foment the overthrow of government, defenders of this right claimed that it will often have precisely the opposite effect. There is, they believed, a natural lust for power, a very common expression in the 18th century, in all humans. This is the desire to control others so they behave as we think they should. Those in government are especially susceptible to the corruption of power because government is simply institutionalized coercion. Nothing less, nothing more. Ultimately, the only way to check the abuse of power is through active resistance. Only if rulers understand that they can go only so far and no farther will they curb their insatiable desire for more power. The right of resistance therefore functions as a kind of safety valve, alerting rulers that they are overstepping their legitimate boundaries. If this right is denied, if the abuse of power is allowed to grow unchecked until it becomes tyrannical, then no remedy will be available except a complete revolution. The right of resistance provides citizens with another option. By resisting unjust laws before the onset of total tyranny, we may be able to reverse the growth of power, thereby avoiding tyranny and the need for revolution. John Locke had some very interesting things to say about this. Quote, "The state of mankind is not so miserable that they are not capable of using a remedy till it be too late to look for any. It does no good to tell the people," quoting Locke, "that they may expect relief when it is too late and the evil is past cure. This is in effect no more than to bid them first be slaves and then to take care of their liberty. And when their chains are on, tell them they may act like free men. This, if barely so, is rather mockery than relief, and men can never be secure from tyranny if there be no means to escape it till they are perfectly under it. And therefore it is that they have not only a right to get out of it, but to prevent it." The right of active resistance, as traditionally conceived, is simply the right to enforce our legitimate moral claims as human beings against the violent oppression and tyranny of government. This right was based on the premise that no person can be excused from committing gross acts of injustice against innocent persons, whatever position of power or privilege they may enjoy, and however much a majority may approve of those unjust acts.